Traveling the Vortex.
We've joined the Doctor as he travels the Vortex and arrives at episode 553, which is very complicated, hard to explain, and up for discussion. I'm Keith.
I'm Shuan.
I'm Glenn. How is everybody this week?
I want dibs on hard to explain.
I'll take up for discussion.
Oh, I was going to take up for discussion. That leaves me with complicated.
Actually,
okay. I'm kind of complicated. I'll give you that. Were you going to take complicated, Sean?
I was going to take complicated if you wanted hard to explain.
Okay. I'll swap.
Okay.
What were we even doing?
I don't think of you as complicated, Glenn. I'm sorry.
Well, good. What are you saying? I'm simple?
Well, I don't know if I'd go that far, but
how's everybody doing? Did anybody? We actually just recorded not too long ago, only about 4 days ago. So did you guys get anything in? Any movies watched or books read while we were in between shows?
I finished Lock and Key Volume 5, and it's good. It continues to be a good run, and you can definitely see where elements of the show came from, although they didn't stick to it religiously, but it's quality. I'm looking forward to finishing that off. We watched Street Fighter, which normally I would not even mention. We have kind of a rotating film on Friday nights, and everybody gets a chance to pick, and it was Julian's pick. And we'd asked, what are you going to do? And he kind of laughingly said, I'll make you watch Street Fighter. And everybody in the room kind of paused for a minute and went, I never have seen that one. Yeah, okay, I'd be down with that. And the look of abject terror on his face was worth, making him watch it as well, just because he did not expect us to say yes to that one. And, Raul Julia is truly phenomenal. Unfortunately, it's Raul Julia's last performance.
Yeah, right.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, it's not a good movie. Don't misunderstand. This is not a good movie, but it's oddly watchable.
Yeah,
despite having a lack of street fighting in it.
Yeah. It's a 90s action film that's, got its merits and
ride the coattails success of the first Mortal Kombat.
Yeah.
Well, wait a minute. Didn't Street Fighter come out before Mortal Kombat?
Street Fighter did come out. Yeah. It would have been riding the coattails of Super Mario Brothers.
Right.
All the way to the sewer. It rode those coattails. But yeah,
high aspirations it had.
It's literally one of the biggest small movies I think I've ever seen, because it's got scads of people. There's extras galore, and yet you can very obviously tell it felt like a shoestring budget, and we only had time to build this corner of the set, so all of those extras are going to pour through this room. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's just kind of amazing. But
I thought the costuming was really good. I don't think the special effects are all that great, but I think the costuming.
Yeah, it was definitely let down on the effects sequence. But yeah, Mel and I are continuing to work our way through Mission Impossibles. We're up to Ghost Protocol. Man, I love that one. And I started, but haven't had a chance to finish it yet, Carnival of Souls.
You had never seen it?
I have never seen it. It's a first-time watch for me.
Yeah.
So
that's shot mostly over in Lawrence, Kansas.
Mm-hmm. And so far, I'm enjoying it.
It's a classic.
What about you, Keith?
I watched the first episode of Secret Invasion.
I have not started it yet.
How is it?
It was good. I liked it. It's it's a spy thriller set in the Marvel universe, and it's so far really well done. Has a nice pacing to it. Sam Jackson gets to really, kind of shine as initially the gruff Fury that we know and love, and then a bit more of a Sam Jackson-y Fury later on in the episode. But so far, I'm I'm impressed. I'm looking forward to the next one.
I saw some people have been liking it to the same mood and feel as Winter Soldier.
Yeah, I could see that. Maybe that's why, because Winter Soldier is still one of the highest ones for me. And so the fact that the feel of it is similar, I think, plays to its favor. Yeah. And yet it still has its humor too, so that helps. If you haven't watched Captain Marvel in a while, it might be not a bad idea to watch the Marvel Legends as a refresher on the Skrulls and specifically what's going on with them.
Right.
Because I didn't really remember, so watching that really helped.
Good.
It's not a bad idea to just step through all of the ones they released, just because. If you don't have time to rewatch the movies. That's all I did, though.
I didn't watch anything. Robin's in a play. She's in Sideways Stories from Wayside School, so we went and saw that on Saturday. And that's a fun little nonsensical play that's based on a kid's book from 1978. That's all I can say about it. It's just a goofy little play. a lot of fun. Really funny moments in it. Enjoyed it.
Hi, I'm Rupert Booth.
I am known as Paul Ferry.
And my name is Barry Williams.
Together, we host Time Ram.
Time Ram's a cruel mistress.
It's a random number generator.
That also.
We roll a number from 1 to 13, and that's our doctor. Then 1 to 300 for the story, and then we ram them together.
Even if it doesn't make sense.
Cruel, I tell you.
Time Ram. Putting the wrong doctors in the wrong stories, so you don't have to.
You're listening to Traveling the Vortex.
Hello, fellow time travelers, and welcome to the Doctor Who Target Book Club podcast, the only podcast to discuss, in story order, all the Doctor Who novelizations. My name is Tony Whitt, and every 2 weeks or so, I'm joined by a 2 to 3 person discussion panel, including our so-called expert who's been a Who fan since 1979. That would be me. We also get the views of intermediate, casual, and novice fans who either have never seen the show or who have never read these books until these podcasts, including
Dalton Hughes
and
Alison Fitz-Seyfried.
You can find us on iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify, or wherever you find good podcasts, or even ones like ours. You're listening to Traveling the Vortex, a Direction Point podcast.
Well, speaking of books from the 70s, I listened to the audio edition of The Making of Doctor Who. Oh, I should set this up properly. Let me get my timer ready.
Let me see if I've got an anecdote that I can do this week. Any trivia that I know about timers? Did you know that Thomas Edison created the first timer? No, I don't know.
Buy that for $1.
Actually, I think it was Aristotle. I think he's the one that created the sand timer that you turn upside down.
Oh, well, yeah. I mean, if we're going to go old school.
That makes sense, yeah.
Sure, I'll buy that.
I don't know that any of that's true. Please don't quote me on that.
Remember, we're just like Doctor Who Confidential. Less facts. Man, I hope that show comes back.
Aren't we getting a version of it?
I don't know.
That?
There's rumors.
Did you?
I think so. Maybe it's just rumors.
Hearsay?
Yeah, it sounds like we're getting it'll be I think it's a shorter confidential type show. But
probably released on YouTube. That's how they've done it on the other making ofs since then.
Yeah, it could be.
Well, as I was saying, this was The Making of Doctor Who, and this is my something new 2-minute review. Okay, so originally this book was released in paperback in 1972. It was a nonfiction tome from Terrence Dicks and screenwriter Malcolm Holk. And then a second edition came out in 76, just after Tom Baker took over the role. And the audio is the version, the second version. And it features kind of a lot of the same folks who came and did the last one that I reported on. You've got Louise Jameson and Dan Starkey and Jeffrey Beavers, but they've added Katie Manning and John Colshaw and Maureen O'Brien, which is very cool. And it's split up into a series of, kind of behind-the-scenes segments. They recount the Doctor's adventures, tying in with our 6B discussion, the extended Trial of the Time Lord sequence for the second Doctor is there. And then, they get into a little bit about how scripts are commissioned and, different actors who have played different companions through the years and what some of the casting decisions have looked like. And quite honestly, there's no information here that you either A, didn't already know, or B, didn't have a, pretty solid grasp on. It is very interesting from this is how television was made in the 70s in England standpoint. So if you have an interest in that element of it, while it's very dry, that was probably the most fascinating look, where they basically took Robot, the first Tom Baker, and kind of stair-stepped their way through it from commissioning the script to going on air. And, year later, afterwards, they had no idea that it was that long of a process in some regards. So that part was very interesting, but again, it was very, very dry. And so I don't know that I would recommend this one as highly as I did the last one. But it's out there and available, and that is my Something New 2-minute review.
I had seen that they didn't even use the cover image from either of the two books. They actually used the cover image from the Doctor Who Monster book. So I guess they decided they're not going to do that one in audio, or they'll reuse the cover if they do, I suppose.
Or they'll use the Making of Doctor Who cover for the Monster book
there you
cover.
Go.
Just switch it all up.
I mean, the 72 version does have a Sea Devil on it.
Yeah, so, that's true. The 76 version is just Tom Baker's head. So I'm not looking to listening to that one now after that little review.
Don't get me wrong. It's not bad.
Yeah,
It's just dry.
Right.
And at times feels a little bit like an ad for Target books, because as they're discussing various monsters, you can read more about the Silurians and then they proceed to read off all of the Target books that have been released, but do not mention any of the episodes that the Silurians are in.
I'll be darned.
I was like, they definitely knew what side of the bread their butter was on when they published this.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
You were invited on an adventure across all of time and space, in a completely random order. It's the Police Box in the Junkyard podcast. Jump in the TARDIS with your hosts,
Eric Gulbranson,
Asad Kheshki,
and
Matthew Kressel.
Explore Doctor Who TV stories, audio adventures, and books, both novels and non-fiction. The Police Box in the Junkyard podcast. It's the entire Whoniverse on shuffle. The Police Box in the Junkyard podcast is a member of the Direction Point Network and is available about once a month wherever you find your podcasts. You are listening to Traveling the Vortex.
This is Tim Trelaw.
This is David J. Howe.
I'm Peter Purvis.
I am Sadie Miller. This is Lauren Cornelius.
Larry, it's Fraser.
For all things in the Doctor Who collecting world and beyond, the Doctor Who Collectors Podcast. I'm Larry Van Mersbergen, your host, and I've been collecting for 42 years. You're listening to Traveling the Vortex on the Direction Point Podcast Network.
All right, well, we don't have any news to talk about this week, and nothing else going on, so I guess we can go ahead and just launch right into our reviews. We're continuing with the Once and Future series from Big Finish. This time we're doing Once and Future, the artist at the end of time. And just a reminder that this is Big Finish's contribution to the 60th anniversary.
Gathered in this gallery are the final artworks produced by the worlds now sadly silenced by time.
From Big Finish Productions, Doctor Who, Once and Future, the artist at the end of time.
You wouldn't happen to have any Time Lord DNA in this gallery, would you?
You. Show me stuff.
Something is wrong.
What are you doing at this end of time?
About to stop a time war. You?
Well, actually, I came here to find myself.
This universe is dying.
He finished his painting just as the world ended.
Really?
Killing worlds as he makes art.
How will you face your death?
The last creations in the universe.
A diamond among the stars.
A TARDIS at the end of time.
Who are you?
Who are you?
Big Finish. For the love of stories.
The Doctor spent lifetimes saving worlds. But there comes a time when the magic stops working.
Suffering from the effects of degeneration, the Doctor heads toward the end of the universe in search of answers. Instead, he finds his daughter, Jenny, and an artist whose works appear to mark the end of every world they touch. The Doctor stabilizes into his fifth form to join forces with Jenny and the Curator to solve the mystery of the final gallery and the art it has collected.
Bum, bum, bum.
Yeah. I'd give it a moderate bum bum bum. It has a big glaring issue, but it's a fun story. When do you guys want to start off?
I kind of want to hear what the big glaring issue
is.
Yeah.
That's why I kind of wanted you guys to go first to talk about it. So, first of all, stellar performance from everybody. I thoroughly enjoy Peter Davison and Georgia Moffat playing off of each other in this story. It's a lot of fun to hear him as the Doctor and her as Jenny, the Doctor's daughter. I really enjoyed the fact that she's, they've obviously, I think we even listened to the last audio that they did together, which featured he and Jenny. And so he learned that he has a daughter in the future. So they get past that. We don't have to deal with that much. But they really kind of play off each other a lot. And I love that she calls him Dad, and it's a lot of fun. And Colin Baker's take on the Curator is wonderful. He doesn't play it like he does the Sixth Doctor. He has a very different tone and style that he takes when he does it, which is something that I think Tom Baker could have done, although I'm not sure they leaned into the future incarnation of the Doctor as much. I mean, that's what they implied in Day of the Doctor, but I think had he been given more about that being the case, that maybe he might have changed up his, or maybe they encouraged him not to, so that, at least for the 50th, it would have felt, like the Fourth Doctor's presence was there. But anyway, I like that Colin does a little bit of different, just a tone, a different demeanor, a different attitude. So all of that's great. I love the premise, the idea that the Curator is going to all these different planets to, remember them before their end, or to allow other people to, share in them, have that last moment. And then him feeling that he must be cursed because he feels like he's the cause of this destruction happening. And so great concept. And herein lies the problem. Is we spend all this time at the front end of this, which is a lot of fun, popping to different locations, because the Doctor, first of all, they have to, I'll get to that. They're popping to all these different locations so that the Doctor and Jenny can run into each other. He's kind of looking for her in a way, and then coming across the artist. And the problem that I have with this is they do all of that, and then we're not even a third of the way into the story when we meet the Curator, and I already know what's happening. And you've got three very intelligent people in this story, three very intelligent characters who are unable to figure out the very simple and obvious situation that's happening. And all three of the main characters should have figured this out much earlier, that we've already set up that there's this gallery. They've been there already. And they should have just known that the reason why these pieces were, why the worlds were being destroyed, is because they have to have a destruction so that the paintings are worth more when they're in the gallery. And for all of them to kind of dance around that and not figure that out, that bugged the heck out of me. When they finally got to the point where, and I think it's the Doctor who's first saying, almost like, I'm going to test a theory, kind of, he doesn't say that, but he kind of, you feel that he's testing that theory, especially taking eventually taking the curator to the gallery. So that to me just kind of was really frustrating that it was so obvious what was happening here, but the three of them didn't figure it out sooner. But overall, other than that, I enjoyed the story and I enjoyed the performances. So I can get past that, but that was just really. The other thing is, and I'm sure Shuan will touch on this because he brought this up the last Once and Future that we listened to, is that it sort of feels like, and this is probably what they've done, it sort of feels like somebody had a good story and then they said, ooh, let's figure out how we can work it into our Once and Future. Because this one even does much less with the mystery of the degeneration, although now we're regenerating again because we've gone from 4 to 5. But also, though, we went to 7 and then 6 and then up to 7 again. And that, they've got those little montages, or not montages, but the crazy, bookends there that are happening. So it's really super obvious now that they're just taking these stories and going, okay, let's put a front and a back on them and make them part of this Once and Future event. So anyway, that's the only two things that bugged me about it.
It's funny to hear you say that. As this started and we were dropped in and immediately dealing with the final gallery, very little about the degeneration other than, do you have any Time Lord DNA? Mm-hmm. And I'll be honest, I had even forgotten that was a thing. I was just here for a Fifth Doctor adventure. Mm-hmm. And so it wasn't until he began to kind of sort of explain why he wanted, it was like, oh yeah, that was kind of going on there, wasn't it? So that's how much it's really not a thing in the story. Mm-hmm. But when they're talking about this final gallery, I got so excited going, what a cool idea. The gallery at the end of time, the final, we're preserving artwork from all these lost worlds. And I just, ooh, that's cool. And then my writer brain kicked in and I said, well, if it were me, I'd have somebody nefarious running the gallery who was actually going and blowing up these worlds in order to sell the artwork at a higher price. And as the thing played out, I kept hoping I was wrong. Because, I mean, right off the bat, I had that thought. And they just kind of kept not leaning into it, but it was this inevitable slow march to it. It was like, yeah, that's where we're going, isn't it? And it did feel like it sucked a little bit of the fun out of it. Which is unfortunate because, as you said, there's so much fun to be had with the Doctor and Jenny and, Dad. Oh, I just do that because he bristles and he rankles and, she just likes poking the bear with the stick, which is fun. And knowing, of course, obviously the, real life father-daughter connection certainly adds to that sense of play at work. But all of that was great. I agree with you about Colin Baker. I thought Colin Baker, let's face it, is always good in audio. Mm-hmm. He is just, I hate to say this, it does sound mean, but he has a voice for radio. He really is in tune with it. And this was a very much different portrayal, and I liked that. And I don't know that you could have gotten away with that with Tom. I think partially because we're going to have Tom show up and we're going to, kind of sort of make him a different character, but we want everybody to know that he's the Doctor, wink, wink, nudge, nudge. But I also think that Tom is such a force of personality. I don't think he would have played it differently, even if being asked to, if that makes sense. He just, he breezed into the room and said, well, I'm Doctor Who. And they said, no, you're the curator. And he says, all right, sure, if you say so, but I'm Doctor Who. I can just see that conversation happening, But, Colin definitely put some different shades on the performance, which again was wonderful and very very emotional, very, very heartstring pulling. Especially blowing up the Eye of Harmony. Boo! I wasn't quite prepared for that one. I didn't realize how much that one little scene in the Five Doctors all those years ago apparently implanted itself pretty strongly in my my subconscious. I was not ready to let go of that one. In fact, when he arrives and says, I should have come here first, I was going, yeah, why didn't you? I didn't even think of it, but you should have come here first. And lo and behold. But, yeah, no, I think you're probably right. I think it's an overall enjoyable ride. I think it's a lot of fun, and I think those are probably the two glaring problems.
Yeah, I think I would agree. Those are the two glaring problems. And they, looking at the story, had they not shown us the fact that they were also selling these pieces of art, I probably wouldn't have picked up on it and then said, oh, well, that's why they're, the worlds are being destroyed, is they're selling them. Because it's not just a gallery, it's not just a museum, it's a gallery where they're selling things. So, yeah, all of that is unfortunate that they made it so transparent. But the ride is enough of a fun ride between the chemistry between all three of them, not just Jenny and the Doctor, but having Colin in there as a curator. He and Jenny had great chemistry in addition to him and the Doctor, not quite bickering like they're actually versions of each other, but still kind of bickering like they are. It was a very nice balance they had there. Mm-hmm. And I think the Colin Baker is probably the shiniest star in this story. His performance as a curator is so nuanced and so well done that it truly makes you think it's a different character as opposed to the Doctor. So he is kind of the biggest bright spot in this whole story for me.
I would agree.
My other issue with it, which I don't, it's not really an issue until we finish the entire series, but the fact that we don't really, they hint at, oh, there's somebody behind this greater than GLaDOS. And they were so trying to do GLaDOS there. But they never really go into it, who it is. So if they don't come back and that have something to do with the bigger arc, I'm going to be very disappointed and feel like we didn't truly get a resolution to this.
Yeah. No,
the gallery may be gone, but the people behind the gallery are still doing what they're doing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a good point. So I'm going to bring up one more thing that's kind of off topic here, but it's related to this story. I can't help but wonder about something, and this may have been intentional, or maybe it wasn't, or maybe it was subliminal, but James Goss wrote this story, and there's a part in there where he likens the selling of the curator's art for profit, like trading cards, and it kind of struck me that maybe it's a jab at something happening in real life. And the reason I say that is James Goss, he was the coordinating producer, and I think he was even behind the idea of Time Lord Victorious, which was the multimedia crossover event that we reviewed a few years ago. And now Doctor Who Worlds Apart, the online card game, the online trading card game that launched earlier this year or late last year, its launch set of cards is the Time Lord Victorious cards. And as you know, those cards are NFTs and they can be bought, sold, and traded among players and collectors. And so there was just some little thing in the back of my mind wondering if this line or even maybe some of the premise of the story was inspired by some way. I don't know. I'm just presuming. I may be reading more into it than there is. But the connection between Goss and that and his baby being used over at Worlds Apart, I thought was kind of an interesting connection. Food for thought, I suppose. All right, well, anything else on Once and Future Part 2? Well, let's move on to Liberation of the Daleks. And this week we are tackling parts 5 through 8. And just to recap for listeners, this is the ongoing 14th Doctor comic that is happening in Doctor Who magazine. And in fact, part 9 just released, I think, yesterday or 2 days ago. And so we're picking up where we left off with the last one. Who wants to start on this one?
I get it, Glenn. You don't have to keep driving it home just for me. I'm on board with you now. I understand it's a 14th Doctor story.
I wasn't talking to you.
Feels like you're talking to me. What a cool, nutty little story. Maybe I am just a big fan of amusement parks in the future. I'm a big fan of amusement parks now. But I enjoyed the 11th Doctor comic that was set on an amusement park world. I remember really digging that one. And this one is no different. When we get the rather early reveal that they've got actual Dalek mutants strung up and plugged into these psychoplasmic worlds that they are feeding off of them. And it just kind of like, and now here comes the Doctor and he's staring at the thing and it's like, oh, this is about to go Jurassic Park. I can just tell this is exactly where it's, and once again, who thought this was a good idea? Have we learned nothing? And obviously the answer is no. But it develops in a wow, didn't see that coming way when the creations bust loose, but they bust loose from the simulation, not from their little enclosures, and climb into the nearest convenient relic of a Dalek casing, which is kind of what I was expecting.
Right.
So that was all very cool, and they sell it with this great image of the Command Dalek coming out of the TARDIS. What a beautiful panel that is. I don't know. I'm very curious to see where we go. I'm enjoying this ride quite a bit.
Yeah, I agree with what you're saying there. I think that one of the issues that I had, and it's not even an issue so much, was they emerge from the TARDIS, which is this wow moment, like, oh, they've actually figured out how to, or something has given them form. I don't know, I'm sure they figured it out. They still sort of believed they were real, that this wasn't a simulation. And the only problem I had is we haven't met this Georgie avatar yet, right? I mean, I don't remember.
I don't remember.
It's Georgette's, obviously, avatar from the dream world, but the Doctor's like, he almost has this moment of he recognizes who she is, like they've been traveling together. And I thought that seemed a little just out of nowhere. And so I kind of, first of all, wondered why on earth she would be on the TARDIS. On the other hand, I wondered how she was even on the TARDIS in the first place, because she's the one that has to let them in. So she becomes a convenience. But that threw me off, like I had missed something. And I didn't go back and fully read everything from the first story, but I went back and kind of glanced to see if I just missed something. And I don't know where she popped up or where she came from. But anyway, the other thing that I had a bit of an issue with, and this isn't huge, and I'm going to sound like I'm beating a dead horse here with this, but I just don't like the whole anthropomorphized animals that they do. Well, so when the Doctor first comes out at the end of the last one, it's the two apes in the spacesuits that are, greet him first. And so I sort of expected there to be more to that. And then this particular set almost just hand wave. At least they give us an explanation, but they kind of hand wave it off. But it's the fact that this was once a zoo, and the keepers. I'm not even sure I understood what the keepers did, but they became the animals, I guess. Anyway, so they gave it a reason for why it's there, but then that's it. We don't get. I mean, we're revisited one more time by the lion guy, but it's almost like the artist maybe even the artist or the writer decided to go for the visuals of that with the Planet of the Apes kind of nod at the end of the last one or two ago that we did. And so then I kind of felt cheated on that because I thought there was going to be more to that in the involvement of this story. And we're 9 parts in now and there's nothing more about that. So that bothered me a little bit too. But overall, I agree with Sean. It's just kind of a nutty, fun story. I'm absolutely loving the Daleks. I'm loving the Supreme Dalek. I think he's the right amount of Dalek, right amount of egotistical Dalek. I love the fact that we've dispatched of the 13th Doctor's screwdriver in this, so that when we return to screen, we don't have to explain where that one even went. Which is fine. I mean, he could have built a new one or whatever, but they don't even have to, do a transition for that now. So they've kind of taken care of that off screen.
In an issue titled "The First Death."
Yeah, no right.
And yet there is no death.
Oh, the screwdriver.
But the Sonic.
I'm completely convinced that it was screwdriver is the first death.
And just for the record, I did go back and look. Paige is in the first set of volumes, but for only 1, 2, 3, 4 panels.
Georgie, you mean?
Or yeah. She runs up and says, "Hey, are you a policeman? Do you want this?" And hands him the soccer trophy.
Oh, yeah, that was her.
And then he ushers into the TARDIS because, their aim's getting better. Right, and then the Daleks pick up the TARDIS, and he's yelling at her, "Shut the door and leave it shut. I'll figure something out."
Okay.
She's literally in 4 panels.
She's literally in 4 panels. So that was all we got of her in the first set.
Was she even in 4? I see her in 3.
Well,
her legs. No, she's in 5. She's in 5 panels. Because if you go back one more page, she's standing outside of the TARDIS in silhouette to the very far left. Yeah, I've completely forgot about this part. Yeah, you're right.
Her legs and her shadow.
How did I forget this? Because this is where they had the little Dalek hover discs, and I got all excited about those because you don't see those very often.
Because you were focusing on the hover discs.
The little hover rounds. Yeah, maybe so.
I also really appreciate you mentioned the Dalek Supreme being just the right amount of Dalek. It's like, okay, so we've obviously been around the block a few times here. We know that Time Lord technology is transcendental, dimensionally transcendental, and that you could fit your entire crew from the saucer into that ship.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But we don't. You're going to stay here. I'm going to take 2 guards with me, and you will be the ultimate surviving things in this universe.
Right.
It's like, wow, what a Dalek thing to do.
Let's go on hold. We lost Keith for a moment.
Yeah, I just noticed.
Okay, he's back.
There he is.
Can you hear us?
I can hear you now.
Okay, very good.
Hey.
We lost you for a minute, so.
Yeah, it looks like Discord received an update and wants to do it, but probably partially started.
Wow, you guys get more updates than on Discord.
I haven't had one on Discord for a while, so.
Yeah, very, very Dalek. Very Dalek of them.
The other fun scene was hey, can you exterminate me? And the whole crowd getting into no, I want to be exterminated. Which just kind of opens up to this, I don't know, nightmare fuel of stupidity and gullibility.
Well,
and
it's that whole they're buying into that fantasy.
Yeah.
And they're buying into it, completely buying into it. And yeah, it just, especially when you know there is a certain amount of threat. We're not sure how much, because they are still constructs of this, what they call it, psychoplasm. And so we still don't know how much, but it really kind of puts you on edge a little bit, because we know what the result could be, how bad that could be. And they're just, carefree. Hey, I want to be part of this experience kind of thing. And it does make it a little scary.
I can't wait to see where it goes with the last
Yeah, I'm very
panel.
curious by the end of this. There's only one place you can find sanctuary, Skaro. Why?
And how retro it looks.
Love it. It looks so much like the old comics. In fact, the Scaro's in the old comic font and the red background, and they got the Daleks on the hover rounds and the different colors, and it's really cool looking. I think I'm gonna make it my desktop. So cool. No, I'm enjoying the story. The few things aside, although giving me a little bit more of where Georgie comes from, and also I think because she's the one that heads to Skaro, so I think that's I think they're going to give us more. The mystery behind this, this gal's avatar. I think we'll get a little more of that story, and it'll make a little more sense, I hope. But yeah, I'm enjoying it. I think it's a lot of fun. Again, it's a lot of fun to have a 14th Doctor story. We just barely got introduced to the 14th Doctor at the end of Power of the Dog, and so we get at least some fun adventures with him and get a little feel for him before the specials come out.
Agreed.
It's doing some nice twists and turns where I'm not sure where it's going to go next. So I appreciate that about it.
Yeah, it's certainly not predictable in any way.
Yeah, definitely.
All right, Sean, well, what do we got coming up on the schedule?
Well, coming up next on the schedule, we continue with our 60th anniversary tie-in episodes with a review of the first 5 parts of Doomsday. The first one being a digital short story that's out there on social media on the Doctor Who from the Doctor Who website. And then hours 2 through 5 are in Doctor Who magazine, and they're comics. So we will be taking a look at that, the start of that story next time. And then, this is still next, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
The Beep the Meep Adversary Archive, because we know you didn't get enough of Beep from our last episode. We certainly didn't. So the Meep returns. We will kind of give just a cursory overview of Star Beast, since we just came from there. But then we will also be covering the comic Star Beast 2, along with TV action and the audio adventure from Big Finish, The Ratings War, and the short story, Who on Earth is Beep the Meep? All of that and more coming up.
Mm-hmm. And, of course, you can find us on travelingthevortex.com. And if you get any value out of this podcast, why not consider putting some value back into it? You can do that by clicking on our Patreon link and consider supporting us. And when you become a patron of the podcast, you unlock more audios and specials from us. Also, please consider giving us a 5-star review wherever you subscribe to the podcast. That helps bump us up in the ratings and recommendations. If you haven't had a chance yet and you're on TikTok, check us out on TikTok. We have a few little videos on there, short form. I think my favorite one that we've put up so far is us playing pinball. I think we talked a little bit about that a few weeks back, but that was a lot of fun. We had a blast doing that. Doctor Who pinball. Make sure you join in the conversation on our listeners forum on Facebook, or make sure you follow us on Twitter. We are at Travel Vortex because of that character limitation. So Travel Vortex.
Is that still a thing?
It might not be. I may be able to lengthen that out. We'll see. It may be longer.
I know the tweets can be any length.
Yeah,
now. I just didn't know if the character name's good.
I don't know. I haven't checked the character names for a while, so we may be changing that. Anything else that we need to discuss before we close this week's program? If not, until next time, I'm Glenn.
I'm confused.
I'm Keith.
Cheers.
You are not. You're hard to describe. Good night, everybody.
Be seeing you.
Thanks for listening.
You have been listening to Traveling the Vortex. Doctor Who and all of its associated programs are owned and trademarked by the BBC. No infringement is intended or implied.
Direction point! Direction point!
A Doctor Who podcast network.